Next up we have one that I have heard a lot of good things about, and it's one that definitely interests me a lot. That being Lord of Light by Roger Zelazny. As I think I have mentioned before on this channel, I have always liked it when a Doctor Who story goes into the direction of dealing with religion, as to me in fiction religion is something that can be very easily manipulated, and giving that a science fiction approach can be very interesting to me, taking what a society heavily believes in and having it twist into something mysterious and sinister. A distant world where gods walk as men, but wield vast and hidden powers. Are they truly immortal? Who are these gods who rule the destiny of a teeming world? Their names include Brahma, Kali, Krishna, and also he who was called Buddha, the Lord of Light, but who now prefers to be known simply as Sam. How has the colonization of another planet become a reenactment of Eastern religion and mythology? From reading the blurb, this sounds like it's going to be an amazing read. Not to mention that the idea it gives where gods walk among men wielding hidden and vast powers just sounds incredible. Extremely interesting sounding synopsis, one I simply cannot wait to read. Striking cover as well. Next up we have a couple from an earlier run of the range with Larry Niven's Ringworld. I was going to get this at the same time with Lord of Light and two others in my local Waterstones, but a copy that they had, which was in the lovely yellowy colour scheme, was damaged, so I just ended up ordering a copy of it online. I was hoping to get the yellow coloured scheme one as they look a lot nicer and in general in my opinion, and despite the listing picture of being that one, I ended up getting this one. Still, I'm happy to have this book, and I have gotten more of these older black covered editions. Whereas they do not look as nice, at the same time it's just nice to get a physical copy of yet another book in this range I am now collecting. A lot of books from this range, as you can probably tell, interest me greatly, and this is no exception. The Artifacts is a circular ribbon of matter 600 million miles long and 90 million miles in radius. Pearson's puppeteers, the aliens who discovered it, are understandably wary of encountering the builders of such an immense structure and have assembled a team of 2 humans, a mad puppeteer and a Kazin, a huge cat-like alien, to explore it. But a crash landing on the vast edifice forces the crew on a desperate and dangerous trek across the ring world. This book is another that has such a strong sounding premise and has been a really popular one over the years. Like Lord of Light, this is another that I have heard wonderful things about, and is one that has been praised over the years. Enough so to the point where it has gotten several additional books building off of its world. This is another that I simply cannot wait to read. As I mentioned earlier, I love the glorious work that is Blade Runner 2049. So whenever I found out that its creator, Denis Villeneuve, was working on adapting this next book into 1, maybe 2 movie or movies, it made me want to read it even more, because if that movie is anything to go by, these potential 2 are going to be fucking fantastic. The book I am on about is none other than the iconic Dune by Frank Herbert, in this glorious looking hardback edition. This is a book that I have heard so many good things about, and is another that I am excited to read. Like with Ringworld, this is another that spawned a series, which I have also heard good things about, but out of it all, this is the most well known from it. Going to be an interesting adventure, as I have heard, as it supposedly is like a science fiction novel written like a fantasy novel, and Arthur C. Clarke, another famous writer of sci-fi who did the screenplay for 2001: A Space Odyssey, compares it to The Lord of the Rings. Definitely going to be an interesting venture. Far in the future, 2 powerful families are locked in a bitter feud. The Duke of Atreides has been outmaneuvered by his arch-enemy, Baron Harkonnen, and must move from his home to take up the administration of the planet Arrakis, sometimes known as Dune, a vast desert where every drop of water is worth a fortune. But Dune is also a planet of fabulous wealth, for it is the only source of a drug prize throughout the galactic empire. And now here we have a couple TV shows that I watched recently, one of which I will be reviewing and the other starting off with the latter of which being Westworld Season 1 Le Maze. Back in February I went on a holiday over to England, as I think I mentioned earlier, and bought a few bits and bobs, such as my copy of Scratchman and, more importantly, here, this for only $4.99 in a charity shop near the hotel I was staying in. And I eventually got around to watching it after deciding to take a break from the X-Files after having recently watched the first movie, Fight the Future, which would have been around about April time when I started with my journey with this series, I think. Also recently, at the time, on the 31st of March, I ended up watching The War Games, in preparation for my review of it to come out on the 21st of June. That video of which stretched to almost 22 minutes, but potentially could have gone on a lot longer thanks to this series watch of mine. Whenever I was watching the 10 episodes of The Maze, The War Games was still very fresh in my mind, and I ended up noticing a hell of a lot of similarities with regards to the plot and ended up appreciating it a lot, as a big fan of that Doctor Who story. As such, during production of the review, I was actually going to implement a section of me talking about and essentially giving a mini review of this series within it. However, due to fears of how I would implement such a section and the ever looming deadline of the 50th anniversary of the War Games' 10th episode, that ultimately didn't come to fruition, which is the main reason why I'm talking about it here. The series follows the highly technological company known as Westworld, as they experiment with implementing humanoid robots into the titular Westworld, which is what it says on the tin, a Wild West themed world. However, due to disagreements of where the storyline projects for the simulated world are going, people within the company start to manipulate the storylines behind one another's backs. And this series follows both the human struggles with this in the real world, as well as how and what all of these changes are doing / affecting to the Westworld within it from the characters' perspectives from within the Westworld, like the robots and all the characters that they've implemented into the Westworld. Personally for me, I think this series was overall something that I appreciated more than I liked. This is a television event which is lengthy to say the least. There are 10 episodes total. The middle 8 are all roughly 50 minutes. However, the first is 75 and the last is 90. Whereas there was a lot of moments in it that I liked overall, I felt that at some points, as this is essentially like one big 10-parter and you can't watch any of the episodes standalone really, the series struggled to give enough story and exciting material to justify its own length, kind of like what some people would throw at the Daleks' master plan for its 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th episodes. There wasn't really any episodes that were bad in this middle section per se, just a 5 out of 10 and a couple 6s I think, with the episode Contrapasso being the weakest moment within this series for me. Whereas this was most definitely not bad and it was definitely good, it was still one thing that I appreciated more than I liked overall. The visuals and acting were all amazing, and the really graphic moments, by really graphic I mean there's a self-harm scene involving a head and a rock at the end of the third episode, gave this saga some great realism. I enjoyed it definitely, but it's not something I would rush back to. If I was to rate it, I would give the overall series 1 of Westworld a 7 out of 10 personally. Despite my mild satisfactory when talking about this series, it was nonetheless enough for me to buy Series 2, as well as the CD soundtrack to this season by Ramin Djawadi, latter of which is simply amazing, with the main thing being one of my favourite pieces of music without question, simply a beautiful composition and album. With regards to Season 2, I haven't watched any of it yet, but I have heard that it goes in quite a different direction to Season 1. So maybe I'll like it more than Series 1, we'll see. Maybe even a review on some of it will pop up someday. And now we have the one that I would most definitely like to review at some point on the channel. As I probably have mentioned in the previous part to this Birmingham Comic Con event already, I love 1960s Doctor Who, and on my channel that is no secret at all. I have loved it and adored it for years, but recently I had only really started hearing about this particular TV event when I was heavily looking into non-Doctor Who shows. I, of course, had heard about this in name, but never really looked deep into it until recently, when I discovered that there was a new Blu-ray release from 2018 to commemorate its 60th anniversary. I am of course talking about this 6-part television serial. It is what people consider to be the father of Doctor Who, Whomix and the Pit. What do I need to say about this television serial that hasn't been said already? But yeah, it was only natural that I was eventually going to come to this when looking into non-Doctor Who TV shows. As a mega fan of 1960s Doctor Who, I was so interested in this serial and was very eager to purchase a copy of it just to see where my favourite portion of my favourite TV show came from. I ended up watching this pretty massive saga, 6 episodes at about 35 minutes each, across 3 sittings recently, and I greatly enjoyed it overall. This is one thing I don't really want to talk about too much, as I hope to be reviewing it in 2020 possibly. But to cut a long story short, if you like 1960s Doctor Who, this is essential. The first 4 episodes really provided some truly excellent science fiction TV material. However, I do think that it did drop off the map in the last 2 episodes. But then that was possibly rewritten. At the point of my sitting of the 3rd and 4th episodes, I was impressed enough to make the decision to go out and buy the Hammer House of Horror movie adaptation of it. And watching that actually made me rethink my opinion on the ending to the TV version. Overall, Quatermass in the Pit is essential sci-fi viewing in my opinion, especially if you're a fan of 1960s Doctor Who and that series' serial Spearhead from Space from the early 1970s. It is one that I hugely enjoyed and appreciated it in quite a few aspects, and I would love to talk about it more on the channel at some point in a much more fleshed out and detailed manner. And now we move on to the merchandise of Birmingham Comic Con in the second part of this video event. A further 5 items to showcase and to talk about here today. Starting off with the last SF Masterworks book that I'll be showcasing, and that is The Difference Engine by William Gibson and Bruce Sterling. When I was looking up the SF Masterworks books to get recommendations as to which ones were good and which to buy, I think I had heard that this one was a good one. I ended up finding a copy in a pop-up bookshop in Birmingham Airport when I was in the process of going back, read the blurb and decided to get it. This is another one that interests me quite a bit, not only because of the incredible sounding blurb, but also because this book goes into the realms of steampunk, the concept of a city ran via steam. This is one that I think I may read fairly soon, but then again with the amount of books I want to read, that could be 12 months away. In London in 1855, the great steam-driven Babba engines powered the Industrial Revolution. The age of the computer is already here, and the industrial radicals and the scientists are its rulers, but there's still treachery and intrigue at the heart of the government, and Sybil Gerard, fallen woman, Edward Malroy, paleontologist, and Lady Ada Byron, compulsive gambler and mathematical genius, are unwittingly caught up in a conspiracy that could change the world. And next up we have the two wonderful autographs that I purchased from a dealer at the con. First one being a non-Doctor Who autograph, and that is one from my second favourite TV show of all time, The X-Files. There was quite a few that I could have chosen to buy at the convention, and I nearly got multiple. William B. Davis, the cigarette-smoking man's autograph was there, as was the autograph of the actor who played X in the show, and even Gillian Anderson's. But the one I ended up going for is this stunning-looking example of Mitch Pileggi's autograph, who played Walter Skinner in the show. As I probably had said in Excursus of a Fox episode 3, this show is amazing. What I don't think I said, however, is that my love for it and Doctor Who is insanely close. So much so to the point where I would say that, if we were talking about just the first 2 seasons, it would be my favourite TV show of all time. But talking about the whole thing, by whole thing I mean the first 5 seasons, first movie and the first 8 episodes of season 6, as that's what I have seen, Doctor Who still outbeats it, as I have mixed feelings on season 3, and season 4 or 5 were great, but not quite up to the level of 1 and 2 were, but 5 was really close. The show is full of great characters and performances, with Mitch Pileggi, or Walter Skinner, being no exception to that. His on-screen chemistry is fantastic, especially with Duchovny and or Mulder and Anderson and or Scully, and has had many amazing moments in this show. One of the best examples of this, I feel, was in the episode Tunguska, in which his character was framed for another character jumping off his balcony. Absolutely amazing autograph to have, and I would love to get more from this amazing show someday. And for the second autograph, it is one that I did an early reveal for in my Scratchman review, and that is David Bradley's. Probably going to do a video on this in the future, but I think David Bradley is an absolutely incredible actor to re-portray William Hartnell's legendary Doctor, and is so close to being absolutely identical. In a video project next year that I have the current working title for, Context in the Critical Reviewing Spectrum and How I Feel It's Destroying It, an exploration for my love of Pink Floyd, I'll more definitively give my opinion on this subject matter, but I hate how people are so readily comparing things for just the sake of doing so or even hating it. Unfortunately, this has happened quite a bit with David Bradley's incarnation of the First Doctor, I feel. Whereas I'm all supportive of him retaking the role in the way that BBC and Big Finish have done, a lot of people aren't and have been fairly pathetic about it in my opinion, even going as far to say that Big Finish are trying to disrespect the First Doctor's era, which to me further proves how I feel that people stretch to the most wildest and unnecessary conclusions and presumptions just to hate something. I mean, you're not even looking at the fucking stories, the main thing about the set. You're bashing the box sets themselves, not because the stories are shit, but because of some context you're getting all fucking pissy over. You're not even giving it a fair chance. Yes, he was poorly portrayed in Twice Upon a Time, but to me that was only from a writing perspective. The way they dropped him into the main events of the story with Peter Capaldi was, to me, clearly done out of huge respect and love for 1960s Doctor Who and the fans of that era, particularly the 10th Planet. In my view, about 75% of everything that the BBC and Big Finish have done with regards to these whole David Bradley First Doctor things is nothing but a tribute to the era and the fans of it. I'm not saying that the whole butchering of William Hartnell's original portrayal in Twice Upon a Time is right, because it most definitely isn't and doesn't fit in at all with the whole tribute shebang. I'm only focusing on the way he was implemented in the events with 12 in the episode. Either ways, it is wonderful to have David Bradley's autograph in my collection. Simply fantastic to have. Penultimate item of this video event, and that is one of the biggest books in my collection. That is The Art and Soul of Blade Runner 2049. As of now, in 2019, interestingly enough, the year the original Blade Runner movie is actually set in, I think it's safe to say that this is my favourite movie of all time, with the Blade Runner franchise being my favourite movie franchise of all time, and the original being another one of my favourites. It's a movie which is nearly 3 hours long, and when I last put it on, it felt like that only 30 minutes had gone by. It's a movie that is just a true masterpiece in my opinion. One of the biggest positives to it, without question, is the visuals, which this compendium compiles, and is one of the main reasons why I wanted to buy this book. I think even if you don't like the movie's plot, or if it isn't really your thing, I think you at least appreciate how much of a visual orgasm that this movie is. This is a book that is extremely well put together, and was my most wanted thing from the convention probably. It was also the last thing I bought at the convention because of me noticing it pretty much last minute. However, this wasn't the only thing to do with Blade Runner 2049 that caught my eye, as I had almost bought a mini poster of the movie hand signed by Ryan Gosling for £75. It was very tempting, but I ended up not buying it. But yes, if you like the movie, especially the visual aspect to it, then this is a must buy in my opinion. But just to warn you, it's pretty massive. And this next item is where it all ends. Another item to do with the Blade Runner franchise, and something that was a true bargain for only £10 brand new. And once you see this set and hear and see the details of it, that is a ridiculously good price. It is this collector's edition tin set of the movie. It is practically impossible to go over every single detail in less than 20 minutes. I would need probably an hour to talk about everything within this thing. To put things into perspective even more, in his review of another edition of this set that comes in a briefcase to emulate Deckard's machine he uses in the movie, and even more stuff, Zanari Zirag said something on the lines of that you could spend the better part of a week pouring through every single intricacy that is contained within this 5-disc set. For people that don't know much about this movie, you're probably thinking that a 5-disc set for one movie could be overkill. But here's the thing, it's not just one movie, it's actually 5, technically 6. I don't know all of the exact details and intricacies as to how all of this happened over the years of the movie's existence, but in total 5 different cuts of the movie have surfaced. The theatrical cut, the international theatrical cut, the director's cut, the final cut which came out in 2007 as well as this set, and is the only version of the movie I have seen, 3 times total thanks to a DVD copy my dad bought at one point, and what is also known as the work print, an extremely rare test version of the movie, which was only released for the first time on home video for the public with this release. This set not only collects all 5 of those movies, but also has a heap of other things as well, such as what is essentially a sick version of the movie, which is all of the outtakes edited into story order, as well as Dangerous Days, a making of documentary that is about as long as Doctor Who's The War Games. To say this set is extensive is an understatement. As well as all of the heaps of content that are contained within the discs, there are also many more additional things included as well. This transparent plastic lenticular of Deckard in the movie, this letter from Ridley Scott himself about the final cut of his movie, which is also in transparent plastic, all of these postcards featuring concept artwork and storyboards which are double backed of how they actually appeared in the movie, and this booklet guiding you through this Blade Runner labyrinth. It is something that I cannot believe I got for only £10. It is kind of crazy. I bought it at this epic vintage sci-fi TV and TV show store, which had so much cool stuff there. The 4th Quatermass serial on DVD, which was the ITV one, I think Terry Nation's Survivors complete TV series in a box set, and so much more. There were a few other bits that I could have gotten and bought there, but I'm very happy with this purchase. An insane bargain for £10. So at last, we conclude my Birmingham Comic Con videos. Birmingham Comic Con 2019 was one hell of an experience, and one that I don't think can or ever will be replicated, which is why I wanted to make these videos to chronicle it and to immortalise it on this channel, which is also part of the reason why this video took so long to do and to get out. It is one that I'll never ever forget, and it was simply incredible. Thank you very much Harry Williams and Joe of Team Drew, all of the furries that I hugged and took photographs with, Showmasters for hosting the thing, and all of the incredible guests and stalls that were there. Thank you all for making it the best convention experience I have had yet.